guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be talking to you about things to know before you go to London in 2023. And we'll start with COVID-19 because that's our priority at the moment. Even though we're back to normal, there's still regulations and rules that you have to follow when you come to London. So depending on where you live and where you come from, you need to have a COVID passport and you need to have at least 2 jabs and a booster. So I can't cover all the countries in the world because that will just be impossible. It will just take me about 3 hours or 4 hours explaining what you need before you travel. So I suggest going on gov.uk website and then type in COVID-19 travel and type in your country where you're coming from and what you need when you get out of the UK. And yeah, that's it for COVID-19. The only reason why I'm looking down is I'm covering all the points in this video so I won't forget. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the weather. Now, London is always complaining. People in London is always complaining about the weather, and it's very unpredictable, as most people know. So it's better to bring layers, a coat with a hood, and maybe an umbrella. I personally don't bring an umbrella. I just bring a thick coat, a thick puffer coat with a big hoodie so I can cover my head with the hoodie when it's raining. But to be honest, a lot of people have said that London can rain a lot, which is true, but it doesn't rain for hours and hours like people think it does. It only rains for, say, a maximum of 10 minutes, and then it will become sunny again, and then it will rain again in another 10 minutes, and then it will just drizzle. So yeah, climate change has had a massive impact on the weather in London. And last year in 2022, in December, it was snowing, and then now it's a little bit sunny in February because we're transitioning into spring now. I've seen a few daffodils and pink flowers around London, but most of the trees are still leafless, meaning that we're actually still in winter but coming into spring. So yeah, that's the weather. But your essentials is to bring layers, a thick coat when it's raining with a thick hoodie, and yeah, that's it. That's all I can suggest is a thick coat, and also walking shoes. That's very comfortable to wear, and the shoes can't be it has to be waterproof, basically, just in case, you know, water goes inside your shoes, because it's happened to me a lot. I've lived here since I was 7, so yeah, make sure you get some really nice shoes for you to walk, because you'll be walking a lot. Yeah, and that's it for the weather. I'll let you know what the season is like here. Winter generally starts from mid-October to late February, and spring starts from March to June, and summer starts from June all the way up to September, and then September to November is autumn. So like I said before, the weather can be unpredictable because of our seasons, and summer It's not like winter, obviously, everyone knows that, but we've had a few heat waves, meaning that the temperature can go up to 39 degrees. No, sorry, 38 degrees. Um, and that's really, really hot for us in London. Maybe if you come from a hot country, that's not really hot for you because you're used to it, but the way the houses are made and the way we live, we're not used to that. So 36 to 38 degrees is quite hot, usually in August. So when you're coming to London, bring a vest, mini skirts, um, bring your jacket as well, just in case it rains, because sometimes it does, but not as much as it rains in winter. Even in autumn, it gets a bit cold. So, like I said, bring a lot of vests, tops, mini skirts, sandals. That's all you need, and just bring one light jacket. Light jacket. Don't bring a thick jacket because you won't need it. So you only need it in autumn and winter. Yeah, so that's the season in the UK. Well, no, in London specifically, because obviously the UK is different. And like I said before, it's unpredictable. And you know, Scotland's weather is going to be different to our weather. I've never been to Scotland before, so I don't really know what it's like there. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is transport, public transport in general. And the first thing I should advise you is using your private car is to be avoided at all costs, because you're going to be charged congestion charge, and that costs about £15 if you go inside the central, and you'll see like a C sign on the road that says you've come into the congestion charge zone. And if you see the C sign on the road, that means you need to avoid going inside that road so that you won't get charged. So that's out of the way. And plus traffic as well is really, really bad here in central London, and even in North London and West London. It's just not worth renting a car. A lot of Londoners, well, 80% of Londoners use public transport to get from A to B. So, and it's very, very, very convenient, but very, very, very expensive as well. Even if there's a cap, you'll be spending about £12 a day, depending on where you're going. And if you're an adventurer, you're going from the West End to the South Bank, or the Hidden Gems, or east to west, or north to south. You know, that can be really expensive depending on how long you're going to stay here for. So do your research. If, for example, you're staying here for 2 weeks, it's better to get a travel card. And if you're here for just 4 days, 5 days, it's better to get an oyster. And an oyster is really, really easy to get. Once you land from your airport, you'll be taken to the tube station from either Heathrow, Gatwick, City, and you can also ask the staff members there to get you an oyster card. And it's really simple. You just go to the ticket machine and then get an oyster card from there, and then just tap your oyster card on the barriers once you've topped up on how much you want to use for that day. It's better to top up £10 when you arrive, at least £10, because if you don't have enough money in there, it's going to be too much of a headache. The barriers won't let you in and out. And make sure when you use the train and the tube, you tap in and you tap out. So even if the barriers are open and you don't tap, you can get fined. The Oyster card can detect that you're not tapping in and out, and then you'll be charged double. So you won't get away with it. So make sure when you use the trains and the tubes, you tap in, tap out. Not so much on buses or trams, but tubes and trains, tap in and tap out. I can't stress that enough, because you'll get fined basically. And yeah, and make sure you top up enough for 4 days or 5 days, or however long you're here for, depending on where you're going. The worst thing about public transport here in London is that it can get crowded, especially during rush hour at around 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And so the tubes and the trains can be packed, especially if you're going into central. You're basically mixing with the locals and the tourists as well. And if you're going through Central Line, the red line on the tube map, the main line that goes through central London and into West End, so that can be really, really busy. And that's the worst thing about it, is I hardly use the tube, to be honest. I don't like using the underground. I try to avoid it at all costs. That's just basic, personally me, because I don't like to be in a closed, confined space where there's not a lot of air, because of the overcrowdedness and people being so close to you. I just don't like that. I try to use a bus or a train, but the convenience is really good in London. Even if you're using buses, the traffic can be really slow. And if, for example, you're going to North London from Central, or you're going to Central from North London, it can take about an hour and a half sitting there in traffic. Yeah, so, but if you're using a train, that's more comfortable, as long as it's not during rush hour. The train is more comfortable, and there's less people during the day. Say, for example, at around 11, 12, 1 o'clock time, there's usually no one on the train. So yeah, that's public transport. And the currency that we use is GBP, pound sterling, Great British pound sterling. We have different words where we use our currency. So we say 10 quid. Quid means 10 pounds. Basically, it's just a slang for like Londoners to use to each other. So yeah, and talking about money, most areas in London are cashless. So we usually pay through the QR codes now, using our phone, and or pay by debit or credit card in restaurants and shops, retail usually. Some areas they still accept cash, so I wouldn't take out more than £100 a day. Just take out around £30 per person if you're thinking of going out to eat. Like, for example, in Chinatown, a lot of Chinese restaurants don't accept cards, so cash only. And a lot of Oriental restaurants don't use a QR code to buy to look at the menu, whereas like restaurants, European restaurants like Italian, Spanish, or even like pubs, British pubs, usually you can order at the table with the QR code. So that's post-COVID. That's what you need to know. But bring just a tiny bit of cash in case. There's also an ATM machine. I don't really know much about how much they'll charge you if you're an international traveler, but just double check with your bank, as well as asking the bank here in this country what happens when you take cash out here. So yeah, so that's the currency and whether you should take cash out or just use your phone to pay for things. So when you're at a restaurant, you don't have to tip unless you've had a really good service. For example, it's already charged at a discretionary rate when you go to restaurants. I think it's like 10% or 13%. It depends on the company, but it's either 10% or 13%. I'm not really sure. I don't really go out to a restaurant, but that's already compulsory that you have to pay that. But if you really enjoy the service, you can pay either a minimum of £2 to £5, but you don't have to. Like some countries, like in America, you have to tip when you go to a restaurant. But here, it's not. You don't have to do it. So that's the tipping etiquette. So our time zone is GMT, which means Greenwich Mean Time, and it's 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time in the US. Yes, that's our time zone. And when it comes to attractions, we have so many attractions to explore, to discover, and to visit. And you have to plan ahead of what you want to see, because when, say for example, if you're going to the South Bank, there's literally 31 attractions to see, and each attraction takes at least 1 hour to visit. And for example, I went to the Tower of London. It took me 3 hours to cover all the grounds. And if you want to make the most of your holiday here, make sure you plan ahead on what attractions you want to see. For example, if you want to know more about the London Pass, you get discounts on more than 80 attractions, but logically, are you really going to see 80 attractions, especially if you're staying here for 4 days? Even if you're staying here for 2 weeks, you're going to be tired visiting all the 80 attractions in London. So if you visit 4 attractions, that's 4 hours of your time gone during the day, and 1 hour for lunch, and then 4 hours. To be honest, my feet is already hurting me. So there's a lot of walking around and you need a rest. And it really depends on how well you walk, basically. So yeah, 4 hours of visiting 4 attractions, that's too much as well already, especially if you're visiting the free museums. I went to see the Natural History Museum. It took me 3 to 4 hours to cover all the grounds. The Natural History Museum is so big, and I literally said, okay, 15 more minutes because I haven't covered this section yet, 15 more minutes more because I haven't covered this section yet, and I was already tired by walking for 1 hour. So I took like small breaks and I sat down and then just enjoyed what's in front of me, really. And yeah, so plan ahead of what you want to see in London, and think about whether the London pass is worth it for you. And you have to think about the queue as well. If the attraction is popular, obviously the queue will be long, and a lot of people actually wait 1 hour to 2 hours to visit the London Eye for just like a half-hour ride. And yeah, and especially during summer and school holidays, would you want to wait 1 hour or 2 hours in summer during the heat wave, and to go on the London Eye for half an hour? Do you think it's worth it? And 1 hour and 2 hours under the sun when it's really hot is not healthy for you. And I do get headaches sometimes. I get migraines just being in the sun for too long. So it really depends on what the weather is like. And I'm not even keen on, standing in the rain either, or in the cold for 1 hour, 2 hours, just to go on the London Eye, for example, outside in the cold or when it's sunny. So plan ahead and think about your time as well when you're visiting attractions. And we have so many attractions here, and we're quite lucky that we can offer you all those attractions that you can see. But in real life, is it worth waiting 1 hour, 2 hours in line just to visit one attraction, when it can take about at least 1 hour to visit and make the most of it? So yeah. And accommodation, we have different types of accommodation, from hotels, hostels, Airbnb, budget, and it really depends on what you want, and what you want to see, and where you want to stay, basically. But the more central you stay in, the more easier it is to get from A to B and visit a lot of attractions. But if you stay in the north, south, east, and west, there's a lot of access to tubes. Not so much in the south of London because of how London is built. Because in the south we rely on mostly trains rather than tubes. Tubes are more for like north, east, and west of London, so that's more conveniently located near the West End, basically. So it's more easily accessible to the central of London compared to the south. So yeah, accommodation varies depending on what you need and how everything like that. And also safety. London is a safe city to live in. What I can suggest is to stay in the central, where there's lots of people even at night, because usually shops close at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. So when you see that the road and the street is dark, avoid that at all costs, because what happens is that you might see a man, standing in a corner, and then you might get mugged. So if you see a street that's really dark and there's no one there, avoid it at all costs. But usually when there's a lot of people, you're relatively safe, but make sure that you keep your belongings with you. I've never really got mugged. Mugged means I've never had my stuff stolen when I'm in central London, and I've been here since I was 7. So I think it's because I'm a local, but I don't know. But I've never had my bag stolen. But like in any countries, you just need to look out for suspicious behavior, and also on the ATM machines. I've never had anyone look behind me when I'm using ATM machines in London, but you still need to be vigilant, because there are still people that have experienced that. So yeah, and with the culture here, everyone is very friendly. Of course, you get rude people everywhere, but you get friendly people also. So every country has nice people and rude people, so that's normal. But we're a very polite country, so if you say please and thank you, they'll respect you for it. And also, when you want to order something, say, can I have, please, thank you. And if you're queuing up for something, meaning that you're in line, you always have to ask the person that's near you whether they're in the queue or not, because that's just our culture here. You always have to ask whether they're in the queue or not, because if you actually jump in not knowing that they're still in the queue, they'll get really pissed off. So yeah, and a lot of Londoners hate it when you're walking really slow, you're taking selfies in front of the London Eye, or you're on Westminster Bridge, and then they're trying to get from A to B and they're in a rush, and then you're actually walking slow. They'll get really angry because they have places to be, and then they just don't like it when you're walking slow. I simply don't like it when people walk really slow. So be mindful of that. Everyone's different. I'm not generalizing, but that's what happens when you're walking really slow. People just get really impatient, and when you go to pubs or bars, when you see that £5 for a pint of beer, that's cheap basically, because a pint of beer usually costs £6 to £7 in London, and when you see a pint of beer that costs £5, that's actually cheap. And the etiquette here is that when you're socializing, you always buy a round for everyone. Each person takes turns to buy rounds, and you can stay in the pub until midnight. And that's really what our social life is like, especially when it's summer. When the sun is out, we always hang out in the pub or in the bar or in the restaurant, and we never leave until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. But the pub culture and the bar culture, club culture, we the pubs close at 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night. So I think it's just to reduce the amount of, you know, people getting drunk. So yeah, and you always say sorry when you, even when you are angry at someone, you always say sorry. You want to ask for something, you say sorry, can I take this chair, or sorry, are you in the queue, sorry to cut you off, but where is the nearest station to the South Bank? Oh, thank you very much, sorry, you first. So yeah, we always say sorry all the time, the majority of us anyway, and I've taken to that culture. So even when you've misheard someone say something to you, you say sorry, and not me because you're sorry for them talking, but you're sorry that you didn't hear what they said. It just means, can you repeat that please? Or when you say excuse me because you didn't hear what they said, oh excuse me, that kind of sounds rude. I don't know why, to some people. Say for example, I was talking to you and then you say excuse me, or I beg your pardon. It just sounds very rude to us. I don't know why, but if you say sorry, then, or pardon, that's more polite than saying I beg your pardon or excuse me. And I think that's it. Those are the things that you need to think about